Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of iTime, which means Indie Time Interview Edition. And I'm Ninja Guy X, and today is going to be very special, very awesome. Something different is that we're doing it a little bit later tonight, and it is, there is a reason. Today we have someone all the way back to Australia, or forward, I would say, because it's later. But it's very interesting, very exciting game that I've been enjoying a lot. But before we do that, let me tell you guys what iTie is. It's basically a place where we interview indie developers, but there's something different about the show, and it is that I wear a tie. Yes, it is the only gimmick that I have, and today I am wearing my Pac-Man tie just because it is a retro game, and I felt like it just fit the the interview. Now, before we introduce our the interviewee, let me introduce you guys to a co-host that we have today. It is the one, the only Gladiator 50N. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for coming in, Gladiator. And also, I would like to thank you to making communication between me and the person that we're interviewing today. I really appreciate it, and it's very exciting.
It is. And I got my scar, so I'm ready.
Yeah, exactly. So, scar, tie, it doesn't matter. It's all in the same family. So I approve this. All right, guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our person that we're interviewing today. And it is the one, the only, Joshua from Critical Games. How are you doing, my friend?
Thank you. No typo, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. People come in and they don't know what to expect. So, of course, it is quite normal. So, it is the morning for you. It is the weekend. Got any cool plans that you got to do this weekend?
Probably more bug fixing, to be honest. That's usually it. I mean, I'm going to see Ant-Man, so hopefully that will be enjoyable.
That is very cool. Ant-Man, man. Yeah. They're on their third one now, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I love they chose a really good actor for this one. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's go have a look at the chat. We got Brandon here. He says, "Plane delays mean I can tune in for a bit." So Brandon mentioned that he couldn't make it today, but it looks like he'll be making it. So I'll probably have to disappear halfway through. Oh, that's okay. So almost past Ninja's bedtime. Yes, I am known to go to sleep very early. And then we got Paul, Mr. Bearing Plays. Welcome, my friend. Very late for you also. So I appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much. Pac-Man on Wreck-It Ralph just showed up on my kids' TV. The time matches. That is awesome. All right, so it is time to learn more about our friend Joshua here. So Joshua, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? How did you get into gaming? Or before we go to that, just tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
I make indie RPGs, generally speaking. That's what I've been doing for the last quite a long time at this point. But so I just try and make really story-driven, character-focused games, usually with turn-based combat. So games in the vein of Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Earthbound, Chrono Trigger, that type of thing.
Nice. Yeah, I like the sound of that. I grew up with these type of games, so I think that we could have like hours of conversation, of course, of these
Absolutely,
games.
Yeah.
So fun. Since you tell us how that you like these games, can you tell us how did you start your gaming journey? When did you start gaming up until how you started creating games?
Well, I started pretty early. I guess I'm trying to think now. I mean, I started very early on, like sort of DOS, PC games and stuff like that. We had some discs and some floppies and stuff like that with some old games on them.
Nice.
My first actual console was an N64, and so that really got me. Obviously, they were trying to do sort of more cinematic stuff sometimes. Then, like Ocarina of Time, was like a real revelation to me about games can be, this real interesting storytelling medium. And then I got a PlayStation eventually, and I played a lot of sort of the PS1 Final Fantasies and Legend of Dragoon and Legend of Gaia and that sort of thing. I love stories in games, Is basically what it was. Yeah.
I see Gladiator smiling. I know that he's like a big fan of the PlayStation 1 era. So
Yeah, me too.
yeah. So it's funny that you started with the N64 because that's one that almost didn't have any JRPGs, you know. So
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I played the ones they did have. I played Quest 64 and Paper Mario.
Very nice. Did you play Paper Mario?
Yeah.
Nice.
Paper Mario, I absolutely love that game.
It's amazing.
But yeah, Quest 64, I wouldn't recommend.
Oh, you went.
Not that one. Not that one.
Good to know. Yeah, I never played it, right? So it's a good one. It's a good recommendation. Then I won't be playing that one. I'll keep that on the side.
That's a rough one, that one. But
yeah.
But you know, the other thing that I did have sort of at play was that my cousin was really into like the RPGs, and so he showed me like the NES stuff and the Super Nintendo stuff, and nice. Like, you know, obviously like I had a Game Boy as well, so you know, the other stuff like Pokemon and you know, sort of like the what were they called, like the Final Fantasy spin-offs that they had then, like I think it was Legends.
On the Game Boy, yes, Legends and
on the Game Boy.
There was two of them. There was Legends and oh man, I'm having a blank. But yeah, there was Legends 1, 2, 3. Yeah, and Adventure, Final Fantasy Adventure. There you go. Yes.
so those types of games, like sort of like I sort of had a very well-rounded education, I guess, for RPGs.
It's funny that you say that because my cousin is the one who introduced me to RPGs also in my youth.
Oh,
so,
right.
Yeah, so I guess this is how people get really into JRPGs, the cousins.
I mean, I've now done the same for my younger cousin.
Oh,
so,
very nice.
I guess we just keep it rolling.
There it is. Yeah, keep it in the family. So when I played 8-Bit Adventures 2, which is actually a game we're talking about today. I think we haven't mentioned that today, but yes, 8-Bit Adventures 2, guys, has been released on January 30th. So have a look at that for sure. So when I started the game, there was an introduction, a very nice cutscene, and it showed me a few people that worked on the game. So I've been curious to know how big Critical Games is, which is the development studio, and who was in the main involvement of the game.
Sure. So Critical Games is really just a sole tradership name for me. But we work with several other like freelance developers. So the game's been worked on for 7 years by 4 people. So there's our artist, Jaram Fahi, and his handle is World of Noel. But he did all the visual elements of the game. Then there's Sebastian Cruz. He's our composer. He also goes by Carfonu. And he did the whole soundtrack. So he did 78 songs for the game. And then we had Sufyan Noor, who goes by Dr. Doom, Doom with an H, OOM. And he did all the like battle system programming and UI programming and all that type of thing. And then I sort of put it all together and do the story and balancing and design and all that sort of thing. So yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's
given like the titles that they have, you must be so grateful, to have them in your team, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just the expertise of these 3 guys is just amazing. Like anything that I didn't know, they would always fill in my gaps of knowledge and say, like, if I said something that was obviously not going to work, they would be like, okay, look, why don't we do this instead? And it's like, okay, yeah, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good to have people that fill in your gaps, basically.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Exactly, and maybe in the future you'll be able to do more projects with them, which would be very amazing. Wink, wink, hint, hint.
Absolutely, that's the hope.
Yeah,
that's the hope.
All right, so enough about the company, enough about you. Let's talk about 8-Bit Adventures 2. So this is your most recent release. Can you tell us a little bit about what the game is about?
Sure. Okay, so 8-Bit Adventures 2 is really an attempt to take the I guess the sort of the charm and the style of classic sort of NES, Super Nintendo, and PS1 RPGs, and just like tell a new story in that style. Create a new experience in that style. And so we take things from all different eras, and we try and we focus a lot on storytelling, we focus a lot on exploration, and sort of building out the world and all that type of thing. at its heart, it's sort of your classic world-saving adventure. But there is a bit of a twist because the villain is a mistreated child called the Glitch, and his entire, deal is just that he is something that should never have existed, and that fact gives him the ability to distort the world in all kinds of crazy ways, like a video game glitch. So he, as something that was never meant to exist, he doesn't really belong in this world. And so his goal is to change the world to benefit him, but that puts everyone else at risk. And so that's sort of where the story kicks off.
Oh man, like I feel like instead of it being more old school like the first game, it feels more like an anime story, right? Like where there's so much more like super weird elements and crazy stories happening at the same time. So
for sure.
I'm looking, I'm someone who I have an ODC where I need to finish the games in order, and I'm just going through the first one right now. I'm not too familiar with the second one, but I'm really enjoying it. And from what I've played from the second one, it's such a crazy improvement. But this is something that we'll be talking a little bit later on. But first, can you tell us what inspired you to make retro RPGs like 8-Bit Adventures 1 and 2 and what inspired you to make these?
Well, I love those games. Like most people that I think make these styles of games. It's just like it's a real passion for this particular genre. But I think it's also just like a desire to see more new games using this style, like not just the visual style, but like the style of design and storytelling. Because like classic RPGs, like they're very much like they're sort of like a video game equivalent of theater to my mind. Like the way you sort of have like these, you could like if you make a character, for example, look down, it's like they're looking towards the audience. If you make them look up, they're hiding their face from the audience, and so that can like say something about their emotional state and all that sort of thing. Like there's a very different set of rules compared to like a 3D filmic kind of AAA game. And so it's a style that I find really appealing, and so I wanted to really create something new in that style for a more modern audience, while still keeping the things that people like about these classic games.
That's really awesome. So I think it's a good segue for my next question because this to me the script of the game is amazing, and I didn't know that you were the one who created the story. I swear, but I'm really enjoying it. Just in the first game, when I talked to the lady in the first town, and you see that they have like a loving relationship, the character development is just out of this world. I really enjoy it. So, what inspired you for the story, and how did you develop the whole world around it?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, because like as a writer, that is one of the highest compliments you can really get. So thank you. I'm inspired by a lot of things, of course, but like in terms of games anyway, like the writing in Final Fantasy IX is a big influence on me. That game just like has such good like character development, and there's just like so much great like NPC dialogue, and it's got those little like cutaway scenes, which are always a lot of fun, like the active time events, I think they were called. I think that game like is a big influence on my writing. When it comes to like sort of like different people that you meet in towns and stuff like that, I also think a lot of Shigesato Itoi's writing from Earthbound and that whole series, just because he's it's a very like eccentric kind of style, but also very kind of earnest. Like it's like given to you in a very like straight-laced way, even though like this person is obviously a little weird. And so I think that influences a lot of like the way that I approach writing characters as well. But I guess what I'd say is like story scenes, it's like sort of more Final Fantasy, and then sort of for like talking to people out in the world, that's a little more Earthbound.
That's very cool. And yeah, you've taken a lot of time also to make every single character say something, and you don't see that a lot in indie games, especially because it takes a lot of time. It
does. It really, really does.
That's right.
Yeah. Like I could Adventures 2, I'm trying to remember now, but it's like it's over 200 NPCs.
Oh my gosh! Wow. So that's like that's like a bunch of paragraph. That's amazing. So yeah, like the thing that I like to mention, and I know that you're gonna agree, is that like modern games, I feel like they don't have the character development. They don't have like they kind of like stop doing love stories for some reason in game, right? Yeah, and it's so annoying. So seeing these type of games where you see these type of development, it's like, finally I can find another game that I can enjoy like that. So AAA developers, if you're hearing it now, put some more love stories in your games. That's what we want.
I think the problem is like a lot of AAA games have pivoted to like, okay, you create your own character, and maybe you make some decisions along the way, and like maybe there's like a optional romance plot where you can say a few of the right things and have an awkward in bed cutscene or something, or like awkward putting the models together to kiss. It's like it's not like it's like a character story. Like it's not actually like a part of your character's motivation or like part of the main narrative a lot of the time. Whereas I think a lot of those classic RPGs, I mean, they always had a very strong romance element as part of the core. Like that was like the character's driving force in a lot of ways, or at least part of it. So yeah, I think that's maybe the way that like a lot of modern games like do sort of approach like player choice has impacted that a lot. I mean, even Persona, like the modern Persona games, like it's very much like you make a choice, you get some cutscenes. That doesn't actually play at all in the main story.
Not that it's boring in any ways, right? It's a really fun game. No. It's just that story, right? Like you just don't see these type of story anymore.
It's just a different approach, and it's trying very hard to like take the player's own preferences into account, which limits what they can do.
Exactly. I told you that I could speak to you for hours. Like now the interview keeps going, and I don't know if we'll be. I think we'll be extending it now. But awesome. So so there's two games. There's 8-Bit Adventures 1. There's 8-Bit Adventures 2. And I've learned that it's a sequel. The second game is a sequel of the first game, so they continue. So for continuity purposes, would you recommend players to play the first game before the second, or do you think that the players should jump straight to the sequel?
I mean, my feeling is definitely like jump straight into the sequel, because I think if you like that, then like maybe go back and check out the first one. But I don't think it's we very much tried to design it in such a way that like it's not required reading. You can jump into the sequel and even though you get returning veterans, they're sort of reintroduced in the story, and you still have like several new fresh faces with fresh perspectives to sort of ease you in. So like most of the people that I've talked to that have played it haven't played the first one, and they've had no problem getting into the story. Which has been a real relief, because that was something I was very worried about.
Yeah. Exactly. So Granted in the chat says Maurice wants the love stories. So Maurice has got kind of like an alter ego that I put on my shows once in a while. But Granted, I just want to let you know that I've named my mage Maurice. So there you go. So Maurice might have a love story depending on what's happening. I know that there was a kind of a spark between him and was it Alina, the green mage? I can't remember her name.
It was it's Adele.
Adele, yes, it's Adele.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to see that, that's quite possible. And speaking of which, this is what I kind of like. I got a connection with these names now that I mentioned them. And when you play the second game, you get to name them again, so you get to keep these names and you get to keep that connection. So just a little something that I wanted to mention, that it's pretty cool that you kept that.
Was important, because I didn't just want to like force new random names on returning players. So
yeah,
figuring out how to actually keep like characters from one game going to the next game when there's like a player naming system is a little tricky.
Okay.
But yeah, because obviously you've got to create a new conceit for the player to name them again.
Yeah. You got to keep that constant on top of that programming code, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's another part of it as well.
Yeah. So, I like that, and actually, I got a good question for you on that a little bit later in the interview. But first, I just want to mention that there's a significant jump in quality between the first and the second game. the cutscenes. You've added some cutscenes in the second game, and they're amazing. They're very Ninja Gaiden like, and I'm a big fan of Ninja Gaiden. The music, I'm speechless. The music on the second game, I've only listened to it on the trailer on the first hour of the game. It's so much better than the first one. But the first one, I've got the battle scene music in my head, all the time because I keep playing it, and of course the quality of life. So it feels like you're jumping early, like from an early Nintendo game to a later years of the NES. It's still an 8-bit game. So can you tell us a little bit on how you've managed to make such a good improvement on the second game?
Well, thank you very much. It's really, I mean, the honest answer is money.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, like having more money to hire people to do more. Like, in the first game, for example, like I drew a lot of the graphics myself. I'm not an artist. I don't really know what I'm doing, or I didn't know what I was doing back then. That was, I guess, one thing. That did make a big difference. But like, just having a really good team working on it for a lot longer. I mean, I definitely knew what I was doing a lot more this time around. Everything was sort of very much planned out ahead of time as much as possible. So I think that's sort of that helped a lot. And also looking beyond 8-bit RPGs, because like with the first 8-bit adventures, I really did focus a lot on looking at sort of like Earthbound Beginnings and Final Fantasy 1 through 3, and like all those sort of like really early RPGs. Whereas this time, we took influence in terms of like quality of life stuff from pretty much every generation of the RPG from NES to now. And I think that definitely made it easier to find like a really good balance between like sort of the classic charming elements and the sort of shaving off rough edges and really taking it to the next level. But I mean, I guess it's just maybe we had a lot of ambition after the first game. Like a lot of us like had things we wanted to do after the first game. Like I know Sebastian wanted to try out some new stuff with the soundtrack and try out some of the extension. I'm trying to remember what they're called exactly, but like Konami had these special chips on their NES games, which would allow them to create like more fancy music, and so he used those for 8-bit adventures too. I know that Jerome, our artist, because he only got to do characters in the first 8-bit adventures, he was really keen to like sort of try and make like the Shovel Knight of RPGs kind of aesthetic, like something which pushed beyond sort of the what you think of as just like normal NES graphics. He calls it NES Plus sometimes, just because I think that describes it really well.
Yeah, he probably upgraded the chip to like maybe like a more RAM or something, right? Like maybe
we're TurboGrafx 16.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
exactly. So when I wrote my questions, I said I played around an hour of both games, but I'm actually 3 hours in the first game now, and I feel like I've only scratched the surface. So how long are both games on for someone who would just be starting the game for the first time?
It's always tough with RPGs because there's like a lot of optional content, and it depends on like a person's skill level. I generally speaking, I sort of say probably like 12 to 15 hours for 8-bit Adventures 1. But 8-bit Adventures 2 is literally, depending on how much you do and stuff like that, it's about 30 to 40.
That's crazy.
So it's a lot.
Oh my gosh!
And also, Granite in the chat's been saying about 16-bit adventures, and like I did seriously think of that at the start of 8-bit Adventures 2's development, but I decided we'd keep it with an 8-bit aesthetic because it's hard to explain without like going into the story and stuff like that. But some of the concepts we wanted to play with, they sort of needed the game to look like a quintessential video game.
Ah, interesting.
So
interesting.
I think that was important for some of the ideas to like come across effectively.
Yeah, of course. It's always on the vision, right? So that makes a lot of sense. So the game is currently on PC, expected to release later on all consoles. So congratulations on that, on getting the license for all of these platforms.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
I can imagine. So. I'm gonna try to extract some stuff from you. You're here, so you never know. Are you able to talk about when we'll be seeing these games? Like maybe like a clear date on when we should expect them?
The sad part is I don't know. And neither really does the porting company. Like the goal is to have them done by around sort of like mid-year.
Okay.
That's the last thing that I heard in terms of timing. But it's just obviously you've got to optimize a lot, and you've got to. Like it's not an easy job. It's definitely not an easy job doing porting. So like they've been doing a lot of work to try and get the game up and running on every platform.
So speaking of which, because there's actually a lot of indie developers watching these interviews. What kind of what are some of the biggest challenges that you're getting from doing these ports?
I mean, the good thing for me is that it's not me doing them.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. So we're working with a company called Ratalaika Games, and they are handling that process. Yeah.
What's that going
so
I'm saying that they're really popular company that does a lot of indie games.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I work with them a lot. They're pretty good.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, but they are really good. And so it hasn't like been, I guess it's more been saying weighing on my mind rather than like, something that I've had to actually do a lot with. But like, I'll be doing like the testing and stuff like that once the porting is, far enough along.
Awesome.
Before we actually push it out. And then I've actually got to get it through lot check and all the different processes you have to go through to get a game out of console. But, yeah.
But yeah, no, there are issues with porting, of course. We just don't know what it is, but it's always interesting to hear what kind of challenges happens.
I think you can't say too much a lot of the time, but
exactly. Even like someone who's not familiar with developing, you might have noticed, but I do have. I'm a 10-year developer, so that's why I know a little bit of it. But
me too.
There you go. Yeah. So someone would think, 8-bit game, easy. Just push a button and you port it. There's tools out there, but there's always little things that doesn't work as intentional.
It basically had to be converted to a completely different programming language. And that's a big job. It's got to be optimized, like for for Switch and stuff like that, because obviously it's a lot easier getting it running on something like PS5 than something less powerful, and so there's a lot involved.
So you probably didn't when you started the project, you probably didn't thought that it was going to be multi-platform, and
no.
That's okay. I see.
Ratalaika have literally developed like porting tech for my engine, so that worked out really well.
Yeah, thank goodness, right? Like, saved by the bell. So I've got 2 more questions, and then we're gonna jump to Gladiator, who has some amazing questions too.
Awesome.
So, I don't want to skip this question because I'm really curious, and it's the only fun question that I have. Not that the other questions are not fun, but so if you could give a name to the warrior, the thief, and the mage, what name would you give them?
Oh, I'm terrible at names. That's why I make other people name them.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, the ones that I use in my own playthroughs, I call the warrior Josh because I'm very unoriginal.
Very nice.
I call the thief Sarah because it just felt like a decent fit. And I call the mage Olrin, which is just a little play on Aloran, which was the Maya name for Gandalf before he came to Middle Earth in Lord of the Rings. So those are the ones I do use, but I don't know if those would be like the canon names. I don't know what I'd choose for canon names, but.
So guys, if you're really bad at names, you want to get the developers, seal of approval, you can go ahead and name them Josh, Sarah, and Oren. When you said Oren,
such good names.
Yeah. When you said Oren, I was sure you were gonna say Final Fantasy X. I think it's Oren's name.
Olrin.
Olrin. Oh, I see. Yeah. That makes sense. How about you, Gladiator?
Yeah,
Gladiator, what did you call your character? Do you remember?
Oh, No.
Ah, man. This.
Okay, same thing. I'm really bad at naming characters. So sometimes if they give me a default name, I'll take it. But if I had to pick it, I'll just use like one of those generator names that
Oh man,
Oh yeah,
automatically
those are
generate.
handy.
for sure.
Those are really handy.
That's good. That's a good idea. So yeah, another last question that I just can't skip because I'm a big fan of video game music. I collect vinyl. I have CDs in the bag that I have. Like I just really like music.
Oh, awesome.
I actually have a local radio show that I only play video game music on. It's pretty fun.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about the music? So what type of music has a composer has made in the past, and what type of tool he's used, and what kind of vision you had for the music? These are all like a lot of questions, but I'm very curious about all of these.
Yeah, obviously I don't want to speak for Sebastian, but like I know that like a lot of the music he's done in the past has been like sort of just for his own enjoyment. Like it's not stuff that's like publicly available and all that. He did the 8-Bit Adventures 1 soundtrack, so that's like that. Was I think the biggest thing because basically he does this mainly as a hobby. And he works on his craft and he really is passionate about his music, but this is sort of like something he does to really relax and enjoy. And so I think as far as I know anyway, like I don't think he's done much public work apart from 8-Bit Adventures 1.
Okay.
And now 8-Bit Adventures 2, which was definitely a big soundtrack. And in terms of vision, like I would always send him like a lot of sample tracks, like in terms of like, okay, this is kind of the tone we're going for, or this is like the style that I imagine. But generally speaking, I really just trusted him to follow his own instinct because he just always got it right. In my view, like there are so many times where even with only limited context, like he would just nail it to exactly what I was hoping for and imagining. And there's some things like our world map theme has a bit of an allusion to the world map theme from Final Fantasy III on Famicom NES.
Yeah.
And there's like a couple of little allusions like that here and there, but like generally speaking, it very much I think has his own style and flavor, and so I generally just like let him go off in the direction that he felt was best, and I pretty much always agree with him.
That is great, and it's hard to believe that that he doesn't. That these are some of his first projects because the second one really shows some skills in chiptune. It's not something
of course that's over 7 years, so like obviously that's a lot of time to like hone everything and work on it. But no, generally speaking, like he would do a song, I'd give it the thumbs up, and he'd move on to the next one, and
there you go.
We did that for years and years and years.
Good teamwork. So these are my questions. We've talked a lot about 8-Bit Adventures. Now we're going to go into more general questions, and I'm going to let Gladiator go ahead and take the microphone.
Yeah, sure. I like how Granite says that Ninja was just the warm up, and I was going to ask the top question, which probably is the tougher questions. But on the top hand, so 8-Bit Adventure 1 came out in 2013, I believe, and then this one came out just recently, like 2023. Is there a chance that there might be a sequel to the entire series again, or is there any work of plans?
That is honestly, like that's one of those ones where it's like even I don't know at this point. I've got lots of ideas. I've got like pages of ideas that I've thought of, to take things in a wild new direction. But in terms of like exactly what we're going to do next, that's still a little up in the air. We are doing free DLC for 8-Bit Adventures 2, so that's going to be like some extra post game content, which is going to have like some narrative to it, and it's going to have some a couple of new bosses and some heavily like rejigged old bosses with new mechanics and stuff like that. So that's what that's kind of like the most immediate thing. I'm also I'd really like to do a remake of 8-Bit Adventures 1, just so that we can actually then like in a new engine just to like be able to get it on consoles and like sort of have the complete story on all platforms. But it's all very much up in the air at the moment. It's like it's going to be a case of like, okay, once the free DLC's out, once the console version's out,
Yeah.
it's like taking stock of like, okay, how much money do we have? What can we do with this? What, all that type of thing. There's unfortunately a lot of like, material concerns that have to be solved. Yeah, but I've got lots of ideas. I mean, I've got ideas stretching multiple games and different styles and art styles and gameplay systems and all that sort of thing. Any developer has like a back pocket full of
course.
full of notes.
I mean, one thing I did like about 8-Bit Adventure 2 is all the mini bosses, like the different bosses you had to fight.
Yeah.
So when you're adding the DLC, adding more bosses, it gives players a challenge for sure. Like to go back and play the game.
I hope these will all be like balanced around max level, which is only level 40 in 8-Bit Adventures 2. To be clear, I didn't make it 99. So yeah, I there's something fun about like being able to know the players' sort of like upper limits and then be able to challenge them at that, because like through the whole game I can sort of only challenge people to a degree, because some people will have really crazy one-hit kill builds, and then other people will sort of not have the latest equipment equipped, and they'll just be trying to sort of like go through the stories as gently as possible.
Yeah.
So yeah,
should be fun. And with that, 8-Bit Adventure 2, as of right now, they're getting a lot of positive feedback, positive reviews. Like the game is on fire. Since we're here, so along with being the top 100 indie game in 2019, 20, and 22, how does it feel to be part? How does it feel to be a part of a cheese studio like Critical Games? Like, how does it feel for you?
It's funny, right? Because I don't feel like we're quite there yet, but I feel like we're making people happy, and that's kind of like my first goal in making games is like I want to make games that like people enjoy, that make people that put a smile on people's face, and so I think like that sense of achievement is really palpable, and that feels really good. But I think we still got a ways to go. I think before I would say like we're achieved at this point, but it's a good. We've taken some good steps. I'm very proud of what we've accomplished so far. Thank you for saying so.
I mean, the funny part is, the first time I actually heard about 8-Bit Adventure 2 was at the New York Game Awards.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, that's when I saw the trailer. I'm like, wait, where did this game come from? Like, where was it this entire time? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks amazing. And then this is when I told Ninja at the same time, saying, hey, you should check out this game.
Well, thank you very much for doing so. I mean, that is like one of the problems for indies, is that like, most of us, right? None of the major sites actually cover any of the news we put out or the press releases we put out, and so it is like we just come out of nowhere. When the game actually comes out, because no one's really covering us in the news, and so I mean, certainly some sites are, and some sites have been really supportive, but generally speaking, it's hard to get
some great achievement though. You like on the world stage and stuff.
Yeah, I mean that was a really cool opportunity.
Yeah,
we had to make that trailer in a week.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
So so Sebastian had to do the full orchestral arrangement, and then I had to make the trailer to that after he finished, and that was a hectic week.
Well, talking about the games, talking about 8-Bit Adventure 2, is there any chance in the near future, releasing a merge for this game, especially a physical copy? Because like Ninja and myself, we love collecting games, physical copies, especially indie games too. Because sometimes you want to have that nice art book, that art cover on the game cover, because it makes you feel good. It's like a treasure.
I'm a massive collector of retro games and stuff myself, so a physical copy is like the holy grail for me. And it's something that I will definitely be pursuing. I'll be pursuing options and that sort of thing. But it's definitely one of those things where you sort of got to take step by step, and okay, console versions finished, then you can have the detailed discussions about physical and all that sort of thing. I mean, someone on our Discord did really good art of some plushies of some of the characters as well, and I that looked so cool.
I need to see these plushies.
Yeah.
I would, like something like that would be so much fun.
Yeah.
There's definitely there's a lot of potential, and as the audience grows, maybe I'll definitely be looking into that. I'll definitely be having those conversations with companies that can make that happen. Oh, and also I'd just like to say I've seen Raf of 314 in the chat.
Yes.
And he's so that's Pierre. That's someone I know. And he's done it. He works on a website called Chalgia's Game Room, and so he's like one of those sites that's been really good about like covering news anytime I send him things and that sort of thing. So yeah,
awesome.
the small sites are really just really good about like supporting indie developers, and it's very much appreciated.
That's awesome. So I have another question, and this is a very specific question. So the game has been categorized as a cloud gaming from NVIDIA gaming. So if you are able to talk about it, is there any chance the game would come on GeForce Now in the future?
I actually thought it already was on GeForce Now, because I don't know is the problem, because like I followed Steam's instructions for getting it on GeForce Now.
Let me look.
But there's no actual way to confirm it on my end whether or not it's working without like signing up to the service.
Maybe they have it on the list. It hasn't gone live, probably.
Maybe I think I set this up like a month ago.
Oh, let's check it out.
So what happens is that it's kind of like you do the checkbox, but they have to like contact you, I think, before to make it possible, because they don't allow they just don't put it right away after that. They kind of like advertise it and all of that, so you might not see it, or they might get a hold of you if you. So I guess the question would be more like, would you open to keep it put on GeForce Now if they ever contact you?
Definitely. Like that's what I tried to set up. So I've done everything I can on my end. So I guess it's up to them. But I know. I think that someone in our Discord actually suggested that, and so that's why I did it, because it seemed like a great opportunity.
Especially cloud gaming.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like, living in Australia, like our internet is not great, so cloud content is still very much not really available.
Interesting.
To most of us here. Or if it is available, it doesn't work very well. So yeah, it's sort of still a bit more of a distant novelty to me, rather than like something that I've actually been able to make use of myself.
Okay. Well, let's just hope it does come, and then more players get to enjoy it as well.
Yeah, I mean that's just it. Like, just trying to get it out in as many places as we can. So
yeah. So another question I have, let me just look at it. It's so small. So as an experienced developer, like you say, you have many years working on this game. Yeah, like all your other stuff, other projects. What would be one advice that you give to someone who just like to start out making indie games, especially like the game genre you have, which is JRPGs?
Well, I mean, look, it's a hard genre to start in some ways. Like on the one hand, like you've got sort of like very simple elements of like, okay, a town with people to talk to, like, a battle scene, which is like, turn-based or whatever. But on the other hand, you also have like an obscene amount of content and like variables to keep track of. And so it's not a bad one to start off with, but like in terms of making a full game, like it's easy to have that spiral out of control. I guess my main piece of advice would be
make a 2-hour JRPG.
Exactly. Like really, like start small. Like start with something that is like really contained. And if you think it's small, probably make it smaller, because you might think it's small, but it's really not as small as you think it will be to actually make.
No. I mean, like you said, you went with 8-Bit Adventure 1, which is only 12 to 15 hours. Then you went somewhere bigger with 8-Bit Adventure 2.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. And honestly, like 8-Bit Adventures 2 was only meant to be 20 hours. Like I had, I made that project way too big in the like initial design document, because I thought like, well, based on 8-Bit Adventures 1, like this many areas shouldn't be too bad. And da, 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 da. But that's what I mean. Like you tend to like trick yourself into thinking that like it's not going to be that bad or it's not going to be that big. But like usually you just need to like start with something and then shrink it a little from there, just to like get the right scale. But I think the other thing as well is just like don't be discouraged if you put out your game and no one sees it or buys it.
Yeah.
Because like that is the most demoralizing thing in the world to like spend all that time and effort and then have absolutely no one take an interest in it. But really what I've learned is that like game development works now. It's like it's a snowball effect where it's like you really need to have a few projects out there before people start taking notice, and that's why sort of like smaller, more experimental stuff to start off with, like that can be a good way to get people's attention. That can be a good way to sort of get your name out there. Have a little bit of a portfolio behind you to say like, oh, I've worked on these other things before. It's a tough thing to like get attention now, but I've definitely seen like in my own experience, the more things you put out there, the more attention you will get, because you will start to build an audience that like will follow you and they'll share your work and all that type of thing. But yeah, I think just like really persistence and scale are two of the hardest things to wrap your head around when you're starting out development. Yeah,
I mean, I totally agree, and that's one great advice, especially for any new game developers as well, trying to get their first step into gaming and making.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
It's not,
especially now. Like, I mean, it's gotten like the market is so oversaturated that like it really is hard to like get shown.
It is. It's actually pretty funny. Like indie games has been on the rise, like in the past few years, and before then no one really know about indie games or didn't really care much. They were all focused like on AAA titles.
Yeah, it's changed. Like it's changed drastically in a short period of time. Like when I look back now, I mean, Steam was still a closed platform when I started making games. Like when you think about that, it's like and then they had Greenlight, and like everyone had to vote on which games they want to get on Steam. So Steam were only like allowing, like 100 in at a time or something.
I remember that.
Yeah, and like so 8-Bit Adventures 1 was actually a Greenlight title. The people voted on to get it onto Steam.
Wow.
Yeah, so things have changed drastically in a very short period of time, and it's hard to get attention now.
Yeah. 100% for sure.
You can definitely do it. Like a good game will break through eventually. It won't be like a out of the gate smash hit success most of the time, which is what we're all sort of programmed to look for, because we hear about all the big successes. So
sometimes even bad games make it through, so you never know, right?
Yeah, well, I mean that's just it, and like sometimes Steam reviews will catch that. But generally speaking, just try and make the best game that you can. Try and build an audience, but and also that's the other thing. Actually, engage with your audience as well. Like talk. If someone says a nice word about your game, or they want to engage, or like ask a question, or have a piece of criticism, like try and engage them in a really polite, friendly way, and just like that's how you will build your audience. Like if people get to like know you as a person rather than like a company logo, they will definitely like they'll have more desire to like support you and be there and take an interest and yeah, I mean people are really nice when you actually just like engage with them.
I saw that on your Twitter. Not that I'm creeping you, on the week that I would do the interview, but yeah, that's awesome. She was giving like that person that you retweeted. She's giving really good advices.
She is
in her account. I don't know who she is, but oh my gosh, really good stuff.
Jackie. Oh, what was it? Yeah. Jackie someone, sorry, but if you go to @criticalgamesau on Twitter, you will find a retweet.
Which is in the description below, guys. If you want to go have a look at Joshua's Twitter, just have a look at that. And I also have a link to the game if you're ever interested. Let me put it one last time here in the show. Also, I mentioned it in the chat, but if you have any questions for Joshua, we're going to open the chat pretty soon. But in the meanwhile, we'll just be speaking a little bit more with Joshua here. I had one question that I skipped here, and I'm curious because, so I'm curious to know what engine you use. These like usually RPGs, people will use RPG Maker, and I'm curious, is that what you use for that?
So we used RPG Maker
MV, okay.
for it. Yep, which is the late 2015 edition.
Okay.
And we have about 135 plugins.
Okay.
To expand the functionality of RPG Maker MV quite considerably. Because it's a really good foundation in terms of like you can if you want to like create an NPC to talk to, or you want to put together a cutscene or whatever, like all the tools are there and they're made quite efficiently. So it's a good system in that respect. It just has a real limitation in terms of the number of features. But what RPG Maker MV added was the engine was based on JavaScript, and you could create JavaScript plugins to like expand the functionality of the engine. And so with enough of them, you get Ape Adventures too. So that's kind of how we had to approach it.
I couldn't tell that it was RPG Maker because of probably these plugins. Like you see a lot of RPG Maker games that's coming out now that is they're very similar to each other, but that one there's a lot of stuff that I couldn't see from other.
I've also I've been using RPG Maker since probably 2002 or something like that. Like I started on RPG Maker 95, then 2000, then 2003, then XP. So it's like I also know a lot of tricks, of like how to make things look better than they actually are. Even though behind the scenes it's like held together with duct tape and is at risk of falling apart any second.
That's amazing. So Gladiator, did you have any more questions for a friend here today?
No, nothing at the moment. I mean, I was just surprised about using RPG Maker because I was so used to RPG Maker MZ. So I thought it was you was using that, but I was surprised you using the other one.
Yeah.
Well, I mean it's we started development in 2015, so it was
you had to, right? Yeah,
it was on then, and all that. But MZ is kind of an interesting one because I sort of feel like it's a bit of a side upgrade. Like it improves some things and doesn't improve others, but that's usually how RPG Maker goes. I mean, I'm really interested in Unite, I think it's called, which is like they've made an RPG Maker in Unity. Like the actual RPG Maker team have made like an RPG Maker like interface for Unity with all that functionality included, and so I'm curious to see how that goes. Interesting. Theoretically, you could do a lot with that.
And honestly, it might be less painful for you because if you do upgrade to MZ, then you lose all of these plugins, and you'll have to find new ways to to use them, right? So I
think I probably won't be moving to MZ just because of that, because of the fact that we have all those plugins.
Yeah.
So if like Ape Adventures 1 does get a remake, it'll probably be made within Ape Adventures 2, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean that would be a funny change, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
The Final Fantasy VII remake equivalent.
Yeah. In the graphics of Quest 64, am I right? Because it's your favorite game.
Yeah, that would not look good.
Yeah, no.
I love the N64's aesthetic, but Quest 64 was not an attractive N64 game.
Good to know. All right, so I think that we're gonna end it here. But before we end it, I just want to ask you, Joshua, is there anything you'd like to say before we end the stream?
I mean, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great fun talking to you both, and it's just it's really helpful to be able to share the game with different audiences and get the word out there, and I mean, hopefully we won't have to keep everyone waiting on consoles too long, because I know there are a lot of people that are waiting on that.
Yeah,
right here.
Yeah, Gladiator mentioned that before.
Sure.
Yeah, he mentioned that.
I mean, honestly, it's like, I want to play it on Switch.
I need to play on my Switch.
Portable. That's the thing that we want for sure.
I mean, it is playable on the Steam Deck, but you want to have a Switch version also. Come on.
I've been
that's just it.
I've been doing remote play on it, so I've been using Steam Link and playing on the couch.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, with my phone. But awesome. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Guys, if you want to support, if you like JRPGs, go ahead and have a look at the game. It's super fun. I do recommend it. It has the Ninja Guy seal of approval. So
thank you very much. I
definitely have
that.
a look. Yeah. All right. Well, with that said, thank you very much, everyone. And hope to see you guys next week on the next iTie interview. Bye, everyone.